Do 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 do. Ba-do-ba-do-do-do-do-do. Oh, hi. Hey, it's Chuck, the Recycled Gamer. I'm just sitting here playing my Sega Nomad. And, I really love the Nomad. It was an amazing system for its time. The Sega Genesis came out in 1989 in the US. And 6 years later, in 1995, I think Sega wanted to get a little more mileage out of their platform. They came out with this fully portable handheld system that would play full-size Genesis cartridges. For the time, it was really an amazing system. You could go in your car or wherever. You didn't have to have access to power or anything. You could just sit and play the games. You could put headphones on. Really an amazing system and very sought after nowadays. There were 40 million Sega Genesis consoles built over the years that it was available. There were only 1 million of these built, so there's one of these out there for every 40 Sega Genesis you'll see, so they're somewhat rare, but if you can get your hands on one, it's a great way to familiarize yourself with the Sega Genesis catalog. Now, the one thing about this system that always bothered me was the color LCD screen. In '95, this was the shiz. It was about the best you could get in a handheld system. But nowadays, compared to modern LCD screens, it's just not quite making the cut for me. I'd like to see a modern LCD screen in this thing. So I poked around on YouTube and on the internet, and there are actually a lot of videos, a lot of tutorials on how to do just that. And so I spent some time, ordered some parts, and tried it myself. And I had actually some great success. There's a little bit of trial and error and some mistakes, but along the way, but I figured out how to do it. In fact, I've done a lot of these mods now for a lot of my friends. And so anyways, what I want to do with the rest of this video is show you how to do the Sega Nomad update screen mod. I'm going to show you the tools that you'll need. I'll show you the parts that you'll need and where you can probably get them. And I'll show you some of the mistakes I made along the way, so hopefully you can avoid them. So without further ado, let's take a look at the Sega Genesis Nomad screen mod. Before we get started, I wanted to show you the difference in the screens between the original Nomad screen and the new color LCD screen. So this is the original here, and you'll notice if you look at them together, there's really a difference in crispness and brightness, and especially in the blackness of the black in the background. The one thing about the old color LCD screen that always bothered me is if you're looking at it straight on, like 90 degrees from the screen, it looks pretty good. As soon as you start to tilt it, you get this negative effect where the colors start to wash out. But over here on the new LCD screen, it doesn't matter what angle you look at it. It stays nice and crisp. You look at it from either side, always looks the same. Alright, here's a quick look at everything you'll need to do the modification on your Sega Nomad. The first thing, obviously, is a Sega Nomad to be your donor. And, if you can find one with a broken screen or a bad backlight, you're going to be replacing those parts anyway, so it might be kind of a good deal if you can locate a broken one. But this one is fully functional. I'm just going to be getting rid of the old screen. The next thing is, this is a replacement plastic screen bezel. That's this piece right here. It gets a little scratched up. Yours might be okay, but I found these pretty easily on eBay. It's a replacement. You just peel the sticker off and apply it. Of course, you'll need a cartridge to test with, and you'll need a replacement LCD monitor. And I'll go into a little detail in a minute about what this is all about. A few other things. You'll need a soldering iron, hot glue gun, some solder, of course. You need some kind of knife or mat knife, cutting knife. This is a Phillips head screwdriver, a jeweler size screwdriver. You'll need that to take it apart. Wire strippers, some wire cutters, and some tape. So I have a couple kinds here. This is some yellow duct tape I happen to have around. Electrical tape will work fine as well. One other tool you'll need is a screwdriver or a bit that fits Nintendo-style security screws. And the reason you need this is because there is one security screw on the back of the Nomad that you need this style of bit for. And you can get these pretty much anywhere on the internet. They're pretty inexpensive. I try eBay. But you want to look for Nintendo security screw bit, and there's two sizes. This is the larger of the two sizes. Alright, so this is the monitor that I use for the Nomad screen replacement. You can find these on eBay pretty easily. And what you want to look for is you want a 3.5 inch monitor, so the measurement goes diagonally across the screen. This is a 3.5 inch. It's called a car rear view LCD monitor. And what it's used for is some cars or RVs will have a camera mounted on the back, and you put this on your dashboard, and so if you can't see outside of a window, you can look at this little screen on your dashboard. There's really not much to them. And there are some different form factors on this. There's some that fold out. This one, so far, of the ones I've tried, is my favorite because it comes apart really easily. And you've got three inputs here. You've got your power, which can be really anywhere from 6 to 12 volts seems to work okay. This is the audio output, and this is the video. Let's go ahead and get started by taking apart the Nomad. And to do that, there are 5 screws on the back. 4 of them will require your Phillips head jeweler screwdriver, and the 5th one will require the security bit driver. So let's go ahead and take it apart. You got 5 screw holes, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that center one is the security bit. Now we've got the screws out, so you want to take the Nomad apart, and it comes apart in 2 halves. I like to work on a towel like this, and the reason I do that is because these little screws, it's like to dump them out like that, and if you dump them out on a hard surface, they tend to bounce and you might lose them, and you do need to make sure you save all of these. It looks like I got almost all of them. I'm going to go ahead and pull the unit apart, and be careful when you do that. There is a ribbon cable connecting the 2 pieces right there. Okay, we're going to take our screws, set them aside so we don't lose them. And again, here's the inside of the Nomad, and you've got this ribbon cable here. Right where the blue part of the ribbon cable is, that's actually a connector, and you can just grab it close to the connector and gently slide it out. It comes back and forth and then it comes out. We'll set this half aside for now because you don't actually have to do anything to this part of the Nomad. Okay, the first thing we have to do is take off a couple of connectors inside here. So we've got this one here. Both connectors should loosen if you wiggle them a little bit. Take your little piece and set that aside. Over here is another connector. This connector goes to the speaker, so we're going to pull that guy off. Done. And then this connector up here, this is the power for the backlight. And we're going to pull this one off, but this one doesn't have to get plugged back in because we're going to actually take the old screen and backlight out. So that will be gone when we reassemble. Next step is to remove this video board in here. And there are 7 screws to do that, so I'm going to go ahead and pull those out. They have little gold heads on them. You do not have to remove this little board here, which is for the select and start buttons. But you do have to remove the rest of these little gold screws, so I'll do that now. Okay, we took out our 7 gold screws that hold this board in. So we're going to go ahead and gently pull it out. And the first thing we can do is take the red cover for this power switch off so we don't lose it. Otherwise it will fall off as we're working. I'm going to go ahead and gently pull this out, and you'll notice that there are a few things in here. This is the inverter board here for the backlight, and I'm going to pull it out ever so slightly. There we go. Sometimes it takes a little effort to get the screen to pop out, but this here is the original LCD screen that we're going to get rid of, and you'll see that it's connected by this ribbon cable here to the driver board. Okay, so I got my mat knife here, and I'm going to use that to score this ribbon cable. This copper shielded flap here, we'll leave that. There's no reason to take that off. But what I'm going to do is cut right down this ribbon cable here, and it might take a couple of goes to get it, but should be able to work it off, and then it's taped on the back. There we go. So there it is. That's the old screen, and at this point it's been rendered useless because we cut the cable, so get rid of that. Okay, a couple things you want to do at this point while you have your Nomad apart. While you're in here, just some basic maintenance. Take a moist paper towel, moisten it with Windex, works for me, and wipe off these electrical contacts here. These are the switch contacts for all the buttons inside the machine. So just wipe them off, get off any oxidation. Pull these rubber buttons out that have the little carbonized contacts inside. Wipe those contacts all with Windex and a paper towel. Make sure they all get dried before you put them back together, and that'll make sure your buttons are super responsive when you put it back together. Another thing you might want to take care of while you're inside the unit is this AC adapter jack right here. If you run the unit off of AC power frequently, there'll be a plug stuck in here, and as you move the unit around as you're playing it, it tends to stress that little jack there, and it's only held on with 3 little solder joints on the board. And what happens is those solder joints will crack, and then you get intermittent power and you have to wiggle the cord to get it to work and that whole thing. So what I'll usually do is I'll get my soldering iron out, wipe the tip off here, and I'll just put it on these joints here, and I'll reflow them, and I'll see if I can get a little closer view for you. Here's another thing you might want to check while you're inside the Nomad is this plastic bezel here. If it's scratched, it's pretty easy to tell. If it's got a lot of scratches on the outside, you might want to just go ahead and replace it. But I'll usually take this opportunity to hold up like a piece of white paper behind it and look through it. And that'll tell you if it's yellowed or not, because sometimes it's hard to tell. And I have an old one here that I took off of another Nomad, and you can see how yellow they get over time. Alright, so you need to grab the little wire that you took off of the screen. So this was the screen that we took apart, the new LCD. This was the little plug that came out of it. So just grab that piece right there. And the first thing we want to do is strip a little bit off of it. So I take about 4 inches, I'd say, maybe that long, and I'll take my knife and I'll score it and get it loose, and then I'll just slide that plastic off. So now you have your 4 wires here. And what you want to do with those is take like 1/8 of an inch off of each one. Just a tiny little bit there. Okay, what I like to do at this point is go ahead and tin these wires so they'll bond right to the board really easily. And I'm going to assume that you know how to solder to some degree, or you probably wouldn't be figuring you're going to take this task on, but I'll just go ahead and tin these really quick. Okay, here we're going to solder the power wires on that will power the new LCD board. And what we're going to do is just take the red and black wires and solder them on right here by the power jack. Now it's important, you could wire them just to the power jack. You got the that's the 6 volts or 9 volts or whatever it is, and then that's the ground. But what you want to do is wire it up in such a way that the screen will be powered whether the battery is hooked up or the AC wire is hooked up. So we're going to first solder our ground on right here. Get that solder to melt, give it a second to harden. Okay, there we go. So there's that one. And then the red one needs to go over here, and you'll see there's 3, 1, 2, 3 right here. It's the one on the right that you need to solder to. And I'm going to lay the soldering iron right in there, get it to melt, give it a second to harden. There we go. So that's that part. Now let's do the video. Okay, the video is the white and yellow wires. And the white is the common, so we're going to solder that onto this lug right up here. This is the jack, by the way, for the AV out, so you can see why we're getting video from this part of the board. And I'm just going to drop the iron on here and melt that. Now this one goes on this. See this bottom row of pins here? There's one that has a little extra pad on it, and that extra pad is right, it's that pin we need. So I like to just drop the lead right on that pad, drop my soldering iron on it, give it a second to harden, and there we go, that's on there pretty good. So okay, in order to test the screen out, which is right here, we have to sort of partially reassemble this unit. So I'm going to take this board and put it back in here, just lay it in there so I can access the buttons. And so there's my lead here coming out that's going to go to the screen. I'll plug that in. There we go. Okay, so there's our screen. And then we need this part over here, the other half, right? Because it has the ribbon cable and it's where you plug the cartridge in. So I'm going to grab a cartridge, Sonic 2. Stick that in here. There we go. And we have to reassemble these pieces. So we're going to plug this guy right in right here. Okay, so I've got a cartridge in here, and I've got these two halves connected together by my ribbon cable. I've got my new power and composite video cable connected to the video board, and this is my new color LCD. So one thing I need is power. So I have my AC adapter here. I'll plug it in, and this is the power switch here, so I'll go ahead and flip it on and we'll see what we got. It's on. There it goes. And you'll notice in the corner here is a little green letters AV1, and that's just the on-screen menu system for the video screen that I bought. And it'll sit up there for a few seconds and then it'll go away. So that's just something you'll have to deal with the new screen. Is every time you turn it on for the first time, you'll see that little green thing there. But yeah, it looks like it's working great. So let's go ahead and put it all back together. This is a good time to take some canned air like this right here and just blow out any dust that's in there. You'll see there's a rubber gasket right here, and that can stay in. So I usually just leave that in. It creates a nice light barrier around the edge. So what you want to do is take your screen here and first peel off the protective plastic. At this point, now that the plastic's off, don't touch the screen. Obviously, you want to keep fingerprints off there as much as possible. And you want to take the screen and lay it inside here. And I fold this board back, and I just lay it inside and try to kind of get it where I think I want it. Then you take the whole unit and turn it over. And some of the buttons and stuff might fall out, but that's okay, we can put them back later. What you want to do is find out where it's going to be centered in the middle. Once you're happy with how you have the screen lined up, then you need to glue it in place. So to do this, you want to keep your hand on the screen and flip it over. Make sure it's right where you want it so it hasn't moved at all. And then we're going to use our hot glue gun, and what we're going to do is glue the corners down. And the way I like to do this is I drizzle the glue down over the corner like this. So it's on the corner of the screen, but it's dripping down onto the plastic below. And I'll usually do opposite corners. See, I'm doing this one down here right now. And I'll do the other two corners. Then what I want to do is I usually just take some glue and blob it on the back here. And I take my board and I want to place it into that glue just to hold it down. Slide it over. Make sure that there's clearance here between your buttons and the edge of the board. Just kind of press it all together. So now, before we can put the video board back in the machine, this board down here, we need to insulate the top of the LCD driver board. And the reason for that is if this grounds out against this board, it could short circuit and cause a problem. So what I usually do is I take some duct tape, or you can use electrical tape, and you want to tear off a piece and cover this board. So now I have to put it back together, and I'm going to start by putting these buttons back inside here. And we'll take our little rubber pads here and stick them on. Great, so that part's ready. Now, if you look down here, we're going to go ahead and pop this ribbon cable out again. So we don't really need it to work right now, we just need to get it back together. And you'll see, here is the bezel with the screen in it. And this piece has to actually drop in there. And then all this wire will just tuck right in along the top. So I'm going to lift up my speaker cable, make sure it fits through this notch over here. Make sure all the wires are staying free and clear. And it should snap right in place. So when I put this back on with the screws, a few of the screw holes won't work anymore because they were actually screwing into the old LCD monitor that we threw away. So The screws that you can replace are over here, this one here, and I believe this one here. So we'll go ahead and do that. One thing you have to remember to do before you screw this board back in is to take your red switch cover here and put it back on the switch. If you screw the board down first, you won't be able to get that back on. So the first thing we're going to do is tuck our wire back in. And I usually just fold it over a few times and then get it underneath. You can kind of use your screwdriver to poke it in there. Make sure the wires aren't hanging out. And there's a lot of room left in here because of the screen we took out took up a lot of space. So now we have to put the cable back in place for the board with the start and the select buttons here. So that simply snaps into place. So that's done. And then down here, our speaker cable has to be hooked back up. So we're going to go ahead and push our ribbon cable back on the connector, just like that. And we're going to fold it up, fit it all back together. Should go together fairly nicely. Yep, it does fit. And then I'm going to grab our power adapter here, plug that in. We'll fire it up and see what we got. Our screen looks great. I'm going to hit start. That works. And now we're playing Sonic. Okay, now that we've proven it works, we just need to put the 5 screws back in the back. So we're going to do that right now. Alright, so here's our fully assembled Sega Nomad with a new screen. So first thing I like to do when I get it back together is test it out. So grab one of your favorite games and stick it in, turn it on, and we should see a very bright and clear LCD screen. I'm just kidding about Shaq Fu. It's not one of my favorite games. It's horrible, of course, but I think everyone knows that. So there we go. Appears to be working well. And just to show that it will also work off of the battery pack, I have a battery pack here, and we'll stick that on the back. Go ahead and pull out the power. And you can see they're now completely wireless with a nice new bright screen. Genesis does. You can't do this on Nintendo. Genesis does. Oh, hey! How'd you like the video? I know it was kind of long, but I wanted to put enough information in there for anyone to be able to update their Nomad. So if you're like me, you'll be blast processing well into the next decade. If you liked the video, do me a favor and click the like button down below, and if you haven't already, why don't you subscribe to my channel. Thanks, and I'll see you next time. Genesis does. You can't do this on Nintendo.
Genesis does.
16-bit arcade graphics.
You can't do this on Nintendo. Genesis does.
16-bit sports action.
You can't do this on Nintendo. Genesis
Does.
Genesis
Does.
Genesis
Does.
Genesis
Does.
Genesis does.
Get Joe Montana free, Pat Riley free, Buster Douglas free, Super Monaco GP free, or Collins free.
Genesis does.
What Nintendo